Hello and welcome to today's webinar where we will be discussing child safety in farming. My name is Petra and I will be facilitating the session on behalf of IOSH Rural Industries Group, who I will refer to as RIG, and introducing our guest speakers and weaving in any questions that you may have. So if you do have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box, and we may have time for some questions after each speaker and also at the end of the webinar. So today's topic, you are probably all aware that working in agriculture means working in the industry with the highest risk of physical injury and work-related fatalities. Today, though, we are focusing specifically on the risks to children on farm, whether living on a farm or visiting a farm. We have three speakers today. So we are going to start by hearing from Wayne Owen, who is a Health and Safety Executive Inspector in the agricultural sector team. And Wayne will cover the HSE's perspective and the UK legal position regarding children on farms. After Wayne, we have Alma Jordan, who is the founder of AgriKids. And AgriKids is a multi-award-winning social enterprise founded in 2015 that has become a leader in farm safety education for children. And for our final speaker, we have a last-minute change. It was due to be Lucy Cheshire, who is the HSE lead for the Soil Association and is also an IOSH RIG committee member. However, after putting everything together for the presentation, Lucy has unfortunately succumbed to flu. So we have Mike Whiting stepping in last minute. Mike is current chair of IOSH RIG committee. Mike is running with Lucy's slides and will focus on the practical steps that can be taken on farm to minimise the risk to children, looking at it from a perspective of a health and safety professional providing guidance, or if perhaps completing a risk assessment for school visits, open farm days and things like that. Mike will also provide some resource links for you to follow up on if you wish to do so after the webinar. So I am going to hand over to our first speaker. So Wayne, if you could turn on your camera and unmute yourself, please. And I'm going to be running with Wayne's slides. So seamlessly, I will get those going for you, Wayne.
Thank you very much, Petra, and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Wayne Owen. I'm an inspector with the Health and Safety Executive on its agriculture sector, and I've got about 15 minutes to sort of take you through children on farms. So if we go to slide 2, Petra, so we can just start with a discussion on where we are right now, so the current situation. So many of you will know that HSE publish a report each year on fatalities in agriculture, and that report is published around Farm Safety Week, so in July. And the latest report is for 2022-23, and that report is available on the HSE website. Shows that 27 people were killed in agriculture, and that the main causes of work-related death they're the same each year. So it's, as you can see on the screen there, it's moving vehicles, contact with machinery, livestock, falls from height, and falling objects. Unfortunately, children are also killed on farms each year, and last year, one of the 27 people killed was a 3-year-old child who was killed by a farm vehicle. And since that report was published, there have been other children killed on Britain's farms. Next slide, please. So a little bit more background to provide a context and sort of show where we currently are. It will come as no surprise if I say that farming has a poor health and safety record. We can see this in the fatal rate, the fatal industry rate for agriculture, and the fatal rate is the rate of fatal injury per 100,000 workers in a particular industry sector. So the fatal rate in agriculture, you can see from the graph there, is a visual representation. There is The fatal rate in agriculture is 21 times the all industry average, and it's 5 times higher than the fatal rate for the construction industry, which we all know is a high hazard industry. So in essence, that translates over the last 5 years, that translates to 156 people have been killed on Great Britain's farms, and that works out at an average of 31 every year. 25 of those 156 are members of the public, and 7 of those 25 are children. Next slide, please. You can see here the common causes of fatal incidents to children, and they sort of broadly around 3 areas. It's being carried on as passengers on agricultural plant and machinery, playing on the farmyard, so they've got no supervision or poor supervision, and working or helping around the farm. And the last bullet point there is really, really important, because many children are killed when an adult is either with the child or very close by, but the adult is working at the same time. And the argument will often be made that, well, as long as the child's with me, they'll be okay. But you cannot, it's impossible to properly look after a child and do farm work at the same time. And so often that way of thinking leads to a complacency, a loss of attention, just for a few seconds it might be, and ultimately tragedy. Next slide, please. Okay, so 7 children have been killed on farms, British farms, in the last 5 years. That's 5% of work-related fatalities in farming. 5%. And this kind of brings me to sort of talk about the culture that exists in large parts of the farming industry. It's a culture that lets children, often young children, into what we've just seen is one of the most potentially dangerous workplaces that we have, a farm. And we've got to meaningfully tackle that culture. At some point, we've got to say enough is enough and mean it. Farming is responsible for the deaths of, on average, 1 or 2 children every year. And this record goes back years and years. It goes back decades. None of the other major industry sectors in Great Britain have such an appalling record when it comes to keeping kids safe from harm. And that record, it won't change by itself. It won't change unless the industry decides to change it. Stakeholder groups such as the Farm Safety Partnerships, its member organisations like IOSH, campaigners, contractors, and most importantly, the thousands of farming families, the farmers, the wives, husbands, partners, grandparents, up and down the country, can all play the part. Putting on events like today, like this one, can help to raise awareness, but more importantly, hopefully it'll help to change behaviours and stopping the trend of fatalities, child fatalities on British farms requires a change, a culture change within the industry. And that's not going to be easy. I understand that. It's not going to be easy for everybody. Excuse me, but it's necessary if we want to stop children being killed on farms. And the last bullet point, I mean, that just sort of shows the cutting truth. Farms are not homes. Farms are workplaces. Farms have homes attached to them, but farms are workplaces. The farmyard is a workplace, and it should be treated as such. A builder wouldn't think of taking the young child to a construction site with them. So as farmers, we have to have that same mindset, that same culture in farming. And the industry must challenge and change the view that exists now in large parts of farming, that the farm workplace is a safe place for a child. Next slide, please. Okay, so what can we do? Well, the main thing is to keep children, especially young children, out of the farm workplace, out of the farmyard. And instead, we can make sure that children are safe. They can be in the farmhouse, or a segregated garden, or a segregated play area, somewhere that's safe and secure, rather than in the farmyard. And in addition, it's really important to understand that we've got to educate workers as well to, if they do see a child on the farmyard, don't just ignore that and carry on. Stop work and take the child back to the farmhouse. And then there's got to be a review there as well. So something's obviously gone wrong. So it's not just a case of just take the child back and that's it. Something's gone wrong. Maybe a gate was left open, or maybe there's a hole in a fence, or maybe there was no fence around the farm garden. Well, okay, so fix it. Fit a self-locking gate. Fix the hole in the fence. Put up a fence. But fix it. Do something and fix it so that it doesn't happen again. Take it as a warning shot across the bow. Next slide, please. Okay, so as an industry, clearly our main duty is to keep children safe, but completely understand, kids are curious. They want to see what mum and dad does on the farm, and we can do this. This is absolutely perfectly possible, but it has to be managed carefully so that the child stays safe. If a child is taken onto a farm workplace, it has to be by a responsible adult who understands the risks in the farming workplace, and crucially, most importantly, is not engaged in any work activity whatsoever. The total focus of that person must be on the child, on supervising the child. And as I've said, many of the farming fatalities that we see over the years, they happen while an adult is in quite close proximity to a child. They're right there with them. So it's not enough just being near to the child. They must be your entire focus. And even then, the farm visit should be carefully planned. So obviously avoid busy periods. Don't take them on in the middle of harvest. For example, keep away from particularly dangerous hazardous areas such as slurry pits and bale stacks and moving vehicles, that kind of thing. Next slide, please. Okay, right. I just want to just quickly go over farm vehicles and children. So many of you will understand PACAR, the Prevention of Accidents to Children in Agriculture regulations, which prohibits children under the age of 13 driving or riding on any agricultural machinery. And this includes, by the way, the instructor's seat in the tractor cab. It's unsafe and it's illegal under those regulations. The prohibition on younger children shouldn't be read as, okay, well, they're over 13, so they can automatically just sort of jump in a machine and start operating. The law, health and safety law, so the Health and Safety at Work Act and the management regs still apply. So the law is still in, the other law still applies. I mean, it is always best, as we've discussed earlier, it's always best to keep children out of the farm workplace. But if older children, so children over 13, are allowed to carry out sort of very simple, straightforward, low risk tasks, it should even then only be after a young person's risk assessment has been carried out. And that should take into account the fact that young people, they they grow and develop at different rates. They've got different characteristics, different mental and physical capabilities at different ages around that sort of age when they're just growing up. So all of that has to be taken into account. Also, if they are operating in any machinery, they have to be properly trained to operate that machinery. So there are specific courses out there by professional training organizations that you can put people through. And even after all of that, the law requires that they are very closely supervised. And as I say, they carry out low risk, simple tasks. And for larger machines, so harvesters, spreaders, as you can see in the bottom bullet point, they should only be operated by people over the age of 16. That said, smaller machines, so adult-sized ATVs, can also form a large number of the fatalities that we see, and for that reason, they should not be operated by anybody under the age of 16, the ATVs. And even then, people, as with everybody else, they should be trained and they should be wearing a helmet. Not to do either of those is against the law. And final slide, please, Petra. Okay, I realise that it's been a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but if you would like to know more, then some of the guidance and the legislation that I've spoken about today is in that slide. But really, it does come down to a choice. It's a choice for farming. It's a choice for every farmer out there. And the choice is this: we either keep the culture that we have in farming, or we choose to keep children safe. But we can't do both. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Wayne. Now, because I've been sharing your slides, I haven't been able to monitor the Q&A, so I'm going to very quickly. A quick question I'm going to take the top question, Wayne. Snakes and reptile bites and attacks contributing to these fatalities. I'd suggest probably not in the UK, but globally. I don't know if you know the answer to that question.
No, not in Britain, I don't think.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to save the second question until the end because that's probably one to broaden out for other people as well. New question in there: is the HSE looking at amending advice on ROPS for ATVs in light of new technology for this equipment? You can answer that one, and then we're going to move on to Alma.
Okay, no, the position on ROPS for ATVs remains the same, but there's new different technologies out there. They're not ROPS, they're sort of crush prevention devices or something along those lines. So we're aware of those and we're looking at those.
Okay, thank you, Wayne. So the question I've left on there, if we get time, we'll come back to it at the end. So we're going to move on to our next speaker. So Alma, if you could turn your camera on and unmute yourself, and feel free to share your screen.
Great, thank you. Everybody can see that. Let's get that. Okay. Now, I hope I'm up there. Is that okay?
It's not running your slide.
Oh, yeah. Just 1 second. I'll just do this.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Oh, we've got your notes view.
Yeah. I'll stop sharing. I'll just go again. It's because I have a monitor. Oh, I love when training happens and it doesn't happen in training. There you go. Okay. First of all, I just want to thank you all so much for inviting me to deliver at today's webinar. And I'm going to be really covering a little bit around the story of AgriKids and the why and the how it all came about. The story of AgriKids actually began in 2014. Within Ireland, we had a very poor year. with regards to farm accidents. We lost 32 farmers in that particular year, and 5 of those were children. And I was a new mum. I live on a farm just here on the east coast of Ireland, and I kind of realised that there was nothing to say that this wasn't going to happen to our family, and that we really needed to start looking at safety from a very serious point of view, and garnering a far better respect for the workplace that was the farmyard. So I went about looking at the different resources that were available, and I realized that many of them were just talking to farmers, and that the language used was quite clinical, and it wasn't resonating, and it certainly wasn't making sense to me, who was the one that was having a lot of concerns on this particular issue. So with that, I decided that I needed to look at how, farm safety was being talked about, because 6% of the Irish workforce is involved in agriculture, yet year on year, 50% of workplace fatalities are happening on our farmyards. In the last 10 years, we lost 187 people to a farm, and 10% of fatalities on our farms are children. So I decided that when it came to farm life, that it involves a lot more than just the farmer. It involves the farm family, it involves the wider community. And I really wanted to create an idea and a concept that was really going to engage, educate, and empower people on the topic. And I saw that when it came to homes, when it came to communities, and when it came to the wider sector, that children were very much a common thread. And I decided if I could engage, educate, and empower children to be ambassadors for farm safety, we could have, probably for the first time, a thorough and dedicated ground-up approach to this particular topic. So I began to look at what resources could I create that would tap into both home, community, and the wider sector. And I developed a series of storybooks and games that could be used within homes, within the community, such as our classrooms. I developed workshops and supported learning aids for teachers. In Ireland, farm safety is already a key requirement on our national school curriculum under SPHE, Social, Personal and Health Education. It's fire, farm, road and water safety. So it already had a place. It just needed content. And then within the sector, whether it's a corporate business or whether it's people working as first responders, I've been able to assist and support their work on this topic to make sure they can also reach the people that rely on them. And when I started this journey, I'll be honest, I thought it was really going to be a case of developing some resources, adding maybe more topics to the conversation. But I've managed to get a much better appreciation for some of the key risks that are out there, some of the more intangibles that are out there. And within the home, I found that there is very much a silent majority who feel they aren't being heard, that their concerns around safety aren't being acknowledged, valued, or listened to. And some of the comments that I used to hear from people was, I'm actually afraid, but they won't listen to me. They just don't seem to see the danger. They think I'm overreacting. They think I'm wrapping the children in cotton wool, that I'm a snowflake. And at the end of the day, these people are very scared of what is going to happen. I recently had a farmer reach out to me, and himself and his brother share the farm. And his concern was that his brother's son, his nephew, was being allowed access at a very young age, 11 years old, to much of the farm machinery. And he says that he wasn't sleeping at night because he was that concerned about what could happen. And he was a father himself. So, he really wanted better clarification on what the rules were, so that he felt that he was better armed, better equipped, and better prepared to handle what was becoming a very difficult situation. And some of the situations that they are talking about is a lot of the common sayings, and some of the sayings that Wayne was actually touching on. All too often I hear people say that, the children are safer in the tractor than on the ground. And my response to that is, well, they're safer in the tractor, but in what context? They're safer at home than in the tractor. To teach them young, there is this I suppose, and I'm from a farming background, I live on a farm here, and there seems to be this belief, this culture that if we don't expose our children to farm life early and farm work early, that they won't gather an appreciation, that they won't go into farming, that they won't want to farm. I have seen more in the last year people from non-farming backgrounds becoming heavily involved in our farming. One girl in particular that I know quite well grew up on a housing estate in Dublin with no links to farm life, yet is now working on a 500 herd dairy farm, and she's also doing agricultural science. She's 21 years old and has become very passionate about farming. And she recently rang us. She has lambed 100 lambs over the past year, and she recently rang us to say that she actually lost a lamb, and she was absolutely heartbroken. So if it's in them, the love is in them. A lot of people will also say, sure, didn't we all do it? Which goes back to this nostalgic view that we seem to have on a farming. And again, you know, they need to learn, or they won't farm. I've yet to see evidence of any child or young person that goes into farming that has been turned off it because they weren't exposed to it at an early age. So I suppose some of the advice that I would give parents, and the tips and skills that I've learned along the way, is that when it comes to working on our farms, that we keep whatever jobs they are allowed to do, that they're age and ability appropriate, that the children only go to the farm with an adult, and as Wayne says, who is not there to work. Your concentration is not on the supervision of your child if you're thinking about the work that has to be done on the farm. Again, with their jobs, don't overface them. Don't place too high an expectation on them, because all they want to do at the end of the day is to please you. And all too often, and especially within Ireland, is becoming a very big problem, is again young children being permitted to not only ride on farm machinery, but to be allowed to use it, and independently of somebody being in the tractor with them. You know, if you do have strict rules when it comes to being on the farm, and there are things that are out of bounds, don't just say no. Explain why it's no. Increase their learning, increase their understanding, increase their respect and appreciation that the farm, it may be our home, but it is also a workplace. For younger children, I found a traffic light system works really well. You know, there are times when the farm's absolutely a no-go. Definitely at harvest time. Calving time can be a very difficult and stressful time for the livestock. So having a traffic light system allows the children to understand the busier times around the farm, when it's okay to go and when daddy and mommy must say no. And again, teach them to respect that this is not just our home, it's where we work. It's a professional workplace. Within schools and communities, I've developed a number of schools programs. I've worked with libraries on a number of events that they do throughout the year, from reading appreciation events all the way through to STEM and cultural events also. The materials and the resources that I create are curriculum led, so they feed into a supported learning system. Our first responders, who have a huge passion for farm safety and who work within communities directly impacted in the aftermath of a farming accident, I've been able to work with them along with their staff by creating resources, and we've teamed up to do many school-based workshops. And I've also done family events, family-friendly events, because I have a dedicated vehicle that I can bring around. So no matter the situation, if it is a grass field site that I'm going to, everybody has the same learning experience. There are screens, games, and activities there that parents can get involved with, talk to their children about safety, learn a little bit more about safety. And it's for all age groups, from 3 way up until 93. There's really no age limit when it comes to the Agri-Kids experience. Finally, within industry, I have always long said that anybody who profiteers from farming must also support and invest in the safety within the farming sector. We place so much value on what our farmers produce, yet there seems to be little value on the welfare and well-being of our farmers. this needs to change. So collaboration is key. And I've worked very hard with regards to corporate social responsibility and targeting a number of key players within the agri sector in the corporate world to assist me in my endeavours within AgriKids. So whether it's insurance, whether it's in food, whether it's in energy, education, I have managed to basically, I suppose, create a CSR solution for many of the companies that work within farming. One great example of this was about a year ago, Car Newmart got in touch with me, and we teamed up along with the local farming organisation to deliver a full interactive day for 750 school children who came to learn, not just have a 40-minute workshop with me on safety. They then went and they learned about the business and the enterprise of what a livestock sale is, what actually happens. They then went and had a further discussion around machinery along with welfare and well-being within the farming sector before each being given a goodie bag and being sent home. It was a very simple event, a very worthwhile event, and there are many children still talking about it today. We ran this very special competition where the children got to design posters, and the winners were actually printed and put up within the mart to help remind farmers about the importance of safety. And when you have a child's illustration talking about something so serious as farm safety, it really does help to kind of get over a lot of the barriers that we face, especially when it comes to our older farmers. Our younger children seem to have a great way of influencing our older farmers. The reconnect within farming that AgriKids has managed to address has been terrific. I've managed to link in home life, school life and community, as well as corporate life, all on this topic, and get them all interlinked and working together, and to really activate many of the aspects and needs that these organizations have within safety. But I suppose where I've really found the most success is in the creating of a supported learning approach for our schools, so our children can be properly engaged and educated. And whether it's front of house and I'm in a school physically, or especially during COVID times, we can develop webinars. There is really no limitations to how the message can reach our children. One webinar alone reached over 4,000 children across the UK, Scotland, Wales, as well as Southern Ireland. And that proved to be a really simple and effective way, because no matter where we are, the issues are all shared and are all the same when it comes to the safety. My two key programs is the AgriKids Farm Safe Week and the AgriKids Farm Safety Ambassador Program. They both are supported in terms of the resources. They both work to engage, educate and empower children, but they suit schools with regards to the length of time that they each can dedicate to this particular topic. It can be run over a week, it can be run over 6 weeks, but children will come away equipped with necessary skills and knowledge to enact real change within their own homes and in their own communities. The topics are all focused around the key areas that we all face around safety, whether it's chemical, farm vehicles, animals, field and farmyard. And I'm also bringing in a welfare and well-being, as well as something else on the bioeconomy, to introduce the whole area and link in the area of sustainability within the whole farm safety and well-being topic. And the last thing I just wanted to touch on, I think it's something that we really have to be very strong on, is that when it comes to our media, whether it's social media or mainstream media, they need to do better when it comes to the issue around farm safety. The Farm Safety Media Charter, which is nothing new, it's a list of guidelines and drafts for media, press, advertising, PR, to only show imagery that display responsible safety practices on our farms. When some of these images appear in our papers, it's like it's giving people permission to behave in this way. It needs to be stamped out. It needs a zero tolerance approach, and it definitely needs a lot of focus in within the future. It's already been done in Australia and in the United States, and there's no reason why it can't be done here also. As I say, the only thing our farmers have to do every single day is to come home. And all too often, our farmers go out to work that day and they don't come home. And heartbreakingly, the same happens to many children. All they want to do is to go to the farm, see the farm, spend time on the farm. But at the end of the day, we need to really, really bring it home to them that this is a workplace, a dangerous workplace, and it needs to be respected. If you need any further details of any of the work that AgriKids does, you can check out agrikids.ie. Thank you once again to everybody at IOSH for allowing me to speak today, and I will take any questions that anybody might have.
Thank you, Emma, and no, thank you for your time. Very much appreciated. So got just a couple of points on the Q&A. First one, it was just a information really, I think, from Brian, who's talked about the HSE-NI and the work that they've been doing, and work with children and with teaching resources that they've been doing in Northern Ireland, and stated that the 10 years prior to 2003, when they started that campaign, there were 21 child fatalities in Northern Ireland, and in the 20 years since, there have been 7. So I mean, 7 is always too many, but certainly better than previous. And then a comment here, I think, from somebody who's nameless, but it says, so Alma, you're an actual hero. And they raise a really interesting point here. So saying, I'm blowing from the city, now living in a rural area, and terrified anytime my children go on a play date in a neighbour's farm. And thank you so much for what you're doing. On that, I assume some of the resources that you make available would be really good if you you know, as a parent, you want to educate your own children if they are visiting farms.
Absolutely, and they're all free to they're all there and available to download. I've got worksheets, I've discussion sheets, and they suit both home and classroom learning. And it's really about creating the conversation and the discussion and normalizing this topic within farm families. And I love the fact that I do actually work in Northern Ireland also, and I love the work of the HSE. We did actually a collaboration at the Balmoral show in the early days of AgriKids, and even last year I got an opportunity through Flowgas we got the children to design a flyer, a farm safety flyer, and the 4 best winners, I went and conducted a workshop in their school. The children in the class got an AgriKids handbook, and then the entire school got a workshop. So it was like 3 layers of impact that happened. And I think that's why I find children so effective and influential in this area. They have no filter. They love to share. They're natural learners. And it's a great way for all families to talk about this together.
Brilliant, thank you. There are some more questions in there. There's some questions around social media, which I think I'll leave to the end, because I think that might be worthwhile discussing with all the speakers. So thank you, Alma. And now we are going to move on to our final speaker. So Mike, if you have unmuted and turn on your video, and I will leave you to it to share your screen. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Petra. I'll just here we go. Hang on a moment. Hopefully we can all see okay.
Yeah, that's all good. Thanks, Mike.
Okay, as a quick introduction, thanks Petra. I'm a qualified engineer with the Institution of Agriculture Engineers, but also very importantly, I'm a dairy farmer's son. So I've grown up in the 70s and 80s on these type of environments. So hopefully giving you the perspective today from not only looking at the hazards of for children, but also very much with regards to, you know, the challenges that dairy farmers face. Every farm is different but similar. It's a magnet for children. Children like the enticement of machinery, vehicles, tractors, as mentioned on the previous slides, parties, etc. And also we've got that thing now with social media, etc. As stakeholders within the industry, safety professionals, then there's some key hazards that we need to identify and control when children have the potential to be present on site. And we're all very much aware that a safe situation can very quickly turn into a hazardous situation if left unchecked. Again, as per Wayne's presentation, best control is to prevent unsupervised access. And you know, that whether that is a, you know, the use of a cordoned off area, maybe where they can see some of the activities on the farm from a safe area, and at the same time the people on the farm can, you know, obviously keep an eye on what's going on, not from their work area necessarily, but you know, we've got people in control of the situation. The hazards may change depending on the season, temporary staff, harvest, dark nights, unknown vehicles on site, etc. Risk assessment and review, identifying the hazards. So this you know, the 5 steps. So identify the hazards, who might be harmed, obviously vulnerable people, evaluating the risks, recording the findings, and then reviewing them as we move forward. So it really is that essence of keeping those areas or keeping the children separate and making sure that we've got a control of the situation. As I say, we're providing that securely fenced off area and keeping children have got very active minds and we need to keep them entertained. And as we mentioned previously, we are on the half-term holidays at the moment. Keeping traffic away, keeping children away from farming traffic and activities. When we look at any industry, then typically 25% of incidents are related to work transport. We know that machines getting bigger. We know that machines are becoming automated. And, you know, we know that also that farming is under pressure with regards to, you know, profitability, etc. And that can sometimes influence, you know, the requirements to get on with the job. Making sure everyone working on the farm knows that they should stop work immediately if they see an unsupervised child, so briefing harvest staff, etc., and just really letting everyone know that there is nothing more important than ensuring that you know, that the area is safe for everybody, particularly children, and there is nothing more important. We've got capacity in the system. If a field doesn't get finished today, it'll get finished tomorrow. But you know, there is no option but to ensure that we you know, we set this as a mantra. At the same time, we you know, we can understand that children benefit from supervised visits to the farm, and that's done through, you know, the things that Alma's referred to already, and obviously we want to build a safe interaction. The adult supervising the children should not be there to undertake the work, and again, that's echoing the comments of what Wayne has said. And it may well be that you know, the parents, etc., make the decisions of, you know, we're busy today. And the children will be looked after elsewhere, or there's arrangements with other people. And we understand, as I say, you know, that some of the pressures on these areas, but obviously some planning and preparation should hopefully help. If children are old enough, tell them about the dangers they should look out for and where they're not allowed to go. Explain the hazards and why control measures are put in place. Put up warning signs. Warning signs are the last line of defence to make sure that children know what they mean. And advise people coming onto the farm of the work of the controls and site rules in place. Consider all vehicles on site, including those coming from outside. So that could be delivery vehicles, milk tankers, grain lorries, feed delivery vehicles. We're also aware that some farms let buildings out to other businesses, etc. So, you know, it's 24-hour deliveries, etc. So all those factors are important. Using safe stop procedures when leaving any vehicle unattended. So the handbrake on, removing the key where possible, locking doors, having set speed limits and reduced vehicle movements. So one-way systems, not reversing around corners, adequate lighting, and using colleagues as a banks person. Ladders to be stored in a safe location and not easily to be accessed. Working at height again is a big factor with regards to all injuries on farms. And the HSE offers guidance with regards to putting ladders in a ladder park. Scaffolding, if we have got scaffolding there, then we need to remove it as soon as it's not used, and ensure that it's blanked off. sometimes supplementary measures are put in place down at the base level to prevent access. Silo slurry stores, can they be accessed? Do they have, the relevant safety features on there? So again, whether that's preventing access to covers, so to pits, covers over the top, etc. Gates where machinery backs up to them for pumping, etc. And we have heard, tragically of the accidents that have been experienced in these areas. Any disused gates or hurdles, again, they should be on a rack and held up off the ground and obviously secured together. Probably one of the biggest challenges, hay bales, preventing climbing, etc. We're very much aware that, they are, again, a big attraction for farms. We want to ensure that we can prevent access. So this may be cordoned off areas, etc. And just, planning ahead of the harvest time, what we need to do and where we need to put these things. We're also very much aware that with bales, they can settle when they're stored, and obviously the hazards that those can present. Livestock, as I mentioned previously, for those people who've worked with livestock before, and you've ever tried to open up a gate to maybe 100 head of livestock that are all hungry, that is a significant force, level of momentum, etc. Animals don't need to be aggressive. They have natural instincts, and if an animal doesn't want to do something, it will let you know. And it can be very stubborn, and its characteristics can change very rapidly, resulting in injury. Not allowing children to have access to bulls, boars, rams, stags, or other animals who obviously have newborn young with them. We're aware of the rose-tinted view of the lambs and the ewes and on the television, etc. But also very much aware that this isn't always the case when we're on the farm. There is good educational development reasons to encourage children to have contact with animals, but only with direct adult supervision, and obviously in a controlled manner. Infectious diseases, again, we're very much aware of, the reports of these incidences, and, we'd be looking to do a HACCP analysis on our farms to prevent the transmission of things like E. coli, ensuring that we've got suitable hand washing facilities in place, ensuring that, that's an adequate, clean water system fed from a potable water source. And then we've got hand towel or roller towel to dry, and obviously adequate disposal. Not allowing access to animals that are ill. I'm very much aware of that's a good husbandry, process. Maintaining vermin controls, clearing our rubbish away, particularly things like wrap off bales, etc., which can a big attraction for vermin. And chemical storage, making sure that it's locked and secured. We've disposed of unwanted containers, via the usual routes, and people can't get uncontrolled access. Keeping gates locked and secure, ensuring who's the key holders, putting the signs up again, so no unauthorized entry, etc., to indicate the hazards, making sure the fences are in a good state of repair. Livestock will always find a route through undamaged fences at some point, and that will be an activity for many farmers in the coming month as they prepare for putting stock out. Electrically powered gates and electric gates would all be covered considered under things like the PURE, which is provision and use of work equipment regulations, and treat them as any part or the same as any other farm machinery with regards to maintenance schedules. And where we've got derelict buildings where access needs to be restricted, what's stored in there? Have we got the hazards such as pits, unsafe ladders, platforms which are unsecured, etc., or that could potentially cause a hazard, along with redundant machinery. Here's a checklist which, you know, is always a good starting point to go through and very much summarises the comments from the speakers previously to say, well, you know, what should we be looking for as the headline, you know, the headline factors. And what will probably happen is these checklists will then roll down to say, well, you know, there could be other factors on the farm which are more specific, you know, and start stimulating those questions. And finally, the links as per the previous presentations, and we thank very much the mother and daughter team at the Girl in the Yellow Wellies for their images that they've supplied here with us. And finally, very much thanks to Lucy for putting this presentation together. So we've covered everything off there.
Super, thank you, Mike. Yes, so Erin and Laura approached us to ask if we would be happy to share the booklet that Laura's daughter Erin put together, and so we use some of the images, and there's an email address on the resource page now if you'd like to have a look at the booklet that they produced. The checklist was from Yellow Wellies. If you haven't been to the Farm Safety Foundation website previously, please do. It's also Mind Your Head Week for those of you who follow Yellow Wellies and want to see what else they've got going on. Right, thank you. If you'd like to stop sharing your screen, Mike.
Okay, hang on.
And then we will come back if all of the speakers would like to come back into the room. And then we've got a little bit of time to run through a few questions. I think I'm going to start with one right at the top, which was around footpaths through farms. So obviously members of the public and families walking can be at risk from interaction with cattle, particularly higher risk cattle such as cows with calves at foot. So the question really, Wayne, is around the practicalities of the advice around keeping those higher risk cattle off or out of fields that have footpaths through them. Is signage sufficient to warn people of the dangers?
Our guidance, AIS 17, is the guidance that farmers would need to go to. And essentially, I think everybody knows about basically a hierarchy. Signs would be quite near the bottom. So there are other things that farmers can do way above that will have a lot more effect in controlling risk. So the main sort of takeaway is I suspect every farmer will know not to put dairy bulls in fields with public rights of way. Moving down, then you would, where possible, you don't put cattle, especially cows with calves, in fields with public access. Where that simply isn't an option, you know, maybe there's a farm with fields that all have public rights of way running through them, then you need to do all that you can to keep animals and people segregated, whether that's by permanent or temporary fencing. They can use electric fencing to sort of sweep the herd around the field and keep them away from public rights of way. So if that's an option, then do that. Assessing the temperament of animals, keeping the period that they are in a field with a public right of way to a minimum, positioning feed and water troughs away from public rights of way, monitoring the cattle daily, and if there are any aggressive animals, then you need to consider culling them. And if any animal has shown any signs of aggression, then they should not be kept in a field with a public right of way again, unless there's segregation in place. And then really sort of last on the list is signage. If you do have cattle in a field with public rights of way or public access, then display signage. So yes, signage is part of it, but it's at the bottom of the list, really.
Oh, thank you. Got a couple of questions around culture. So culture on farms, how how we can approach leading the change around that, around attitudes and behaviours on individual farms. Mark Thomas has made the point that most farms don't have HR departments or health and safety representatives to take the lead. There's another point around coming from farming family, brought up on a farm, always ridden on trailers and tractors. It's hard to change that perspective. Any comments on how we get that culture change, even if it's small steps? I don't know, Alma, I think maybe if I go to you first, because I think you probably.
Yeah, and I actually live within this culture. I hear this a lot, and I hear a lot of questions, and that's why I always talk about my silent majority who understand what the nostalgia is. But when I go into a class, I explain to the children that the tractor that I grew up with is not the tractor that I have now. It's apples and it's pears. It's all fruit, but it's all different. That we have bigger machinery now. The blind spots are a lot more pronounced. We also have issues around consoles going into tractors, creating further blind spots. So I remember my mom giving me a book when I was pregnant, and it was a book that she used in the 70s. And there was one chapter that was about smoking, and it said, science is telling us that cigarettes and smoking may be bad for pregnancy. If you do smoke, only have maybe 7 a day. Now, I immediately handed that book back. Okay. When we know that something is wrong, why do we still go out and do it? We talk about changing the culture. If we really want to change what this culture, if we're not willing to change our culture, change our attitudes, change our behaviors, then we have to keep the risk. And quite frankly, we can't keep this risk. It's all relative now. Children are safe in tractors beside us. Compared to what? Being at home, being running around the yard. Don't have them running around the yard from the get-go. They should be at home. They should be under supervision. I speak a lot. I work part-time with Embrace Farm, which is a farm accident support group, and they work with many families who would unring so many bells if they had that opportunity. These people have lost children, they've lost spouses. We had one incident where a woman was 24 weeks pregnant, had to go into the piece of machinery that had taken her husband's life to say goodbye to him. These people would tell you, change the culture, change your ways before it's too late. And within media, I mean, I'm not just talking about people putting up imagery that annoys those of us who are advocates for safety. Those images actually trigger people who have been affected by a farming accident. And when they see, videos posted on social media, when they see the various, pieces of imagery made public and made light of, it really is a slap in the face for the tragedy that those people are going through. So it's really about thinking about other farmers, other families, and all of us working together to safeguard this sector, and to quit the awful reputation that it has and continues to have, because we just can't change our ways. Well, we have to change them.
Thank you. That brings us on really to the social media question. There was a few points in the Q&A around social media. I'm going to come in. I mean, you were talking there about making sure those messages are appropriate. But we all see things on social media that are wrong and are turned into the comments on it are, oh, isn't that great? Yes, that's how I was brought up. Isn't that cute? So we need to change those attitudes. We need to challenge some of those things when we see them. But Wayne, I'm going to come to you because there's a question which I've actually asked you before. In a different context, I know. With social media, as with police programs, can the HSC prosecute on purposed unsafe acts, particularly in reference to that Clarkson's Farm picture? So that's from Stuart. If you want to take that one.
Yeah, thanks, Petra. I think with the social media aspect and the sort of the move to realistic farming programs, I think there's two aspects really. In short, the answer is yes. If there's a breach and it's a working farm, then HSE can take enforcement action. So I mean, where we do see incidents of poor behaviour or unsafe behaviour, then HSE do take action, have taken action in the past to correct that with the farmers themselves, celebrity or otherwise. But there's also the aspect of the TV companies as well. And the TV companies have to take some responsibility as well. It's not good enough just to point a camera, film somebody doing something that's illegal or unsafe. And the TV companies, I think, are starting to understand that and understand that they have duties too. So I think it's that double aspect really as to what we need to do.
Oh, thank you. I am going to have to wrap up the Q&A there because we have hit the hour. So lots of good chat and lots of good questions raised, which some people have actually answered within the Q&A on our behalf, which is good. So it just really brings me to say thank you again to all our guest speakers. As you've been told, I think it was in the chat as well, the webinar is recorded and will be made available as with all of IOSH webinar series. So if you want to review anything or you want to review some of those resources again, you will be able to access it through the recording. So final thank you to all our guest speakers for your time and expert insight. I think it's been a really interesting hour. And let's hope that we can keep moving towards fewer and ideally none child fatalities on our farms. So, thank you very much, everybody, and have a great day.
Thank you.